6:30 on the dot. If you are just joining, if you could please put your name and location where you're calling from in the chat. We always just love to know who is chiming in, and we welcome you here today. So because we have everyone already on this call, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to start right on time today. If you could be sure to just leave your computers mute until, at least until we get to Q&A, that would be great. My name is Karina Crump. I am a Senior Program Manager with the California Black Women's. Thank you, Julie, from Oakland. I am Karina Crump with the California Black Women's Collective. We are excited to have you here today for our Restful Resistance series. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull up our presentation for today. It won't allow me to try that one more time. Okay, perfect. So yes, Restful Resistance, this is our virtual space where Black women come together to recharge, reclaim, and rebuild our political power. Today's conversation is going to be getting ready for 2026. We're mapping out our influence. And we are very excited. We have some great guests today joining us, joining us today on today's call. Again, welcome. We are super excited to have you here. Want to give everyone a chance. I see everyone's logging in. That is amazing. Again, if you're just joining, want to be sure that you please put your name into the chat so that we know where you're dialing in from. So good evening, everyone. I know the rain is just pouring outside and it's easy for us to just want to crawl up into our little space and bundle up. So we do thank you for being on the call with us today. We won't keep you long. Today and every third Monday of the month, we come together just to be reminded that rest isn't a reward, that it is, rest isn't a reward for work, but it is a part of our work. And that we come together for this, on this safe space so that we can all together collectively build on what Restful Resistance looks like. Okay, so let's go to the next one. And we've done our roll call again. If you're just chiming in, please be sure to let us know by adding your name and city or state to the chat. So today I'm going to run through the agenda. We are going to have our Pour Into Your Sister segment, which is our encouragement session. We'll then go have our fireside chat with Teri Holoman. And after that, it'll be followed by a quick Q&A. And then we'll have joy practice with Davida Chanel Baker. And then we'll do some announcements and we will close out. So Pour Into Your Sister. Again, this is our encouragement session. This is where we like to highlight how rest is a radical act of commitment to mental health and how rest itself becomes a form of resistance. For today's session, I am going to share a short video that really captures the heart of resilience. So often we do think that resilience means pushing through, but resilience really is about rest. It's how we recover and how we rise again. As you watch, I want you to think about resilience, what resilience looks like for you, and when it's rooted in rest and renewal. So I'm going to just switch gears really quickly.
Some people say you have to be broken to be fixed again. My name is Asha Phillip, and I run. Athletics, for me, was just a bit of fun. It was something different and it was something new. Trampolining was my main sport, and I loved it. And then I fell into double mini trampolining, and then I became a world junior champion at it. I was at the World Championships in Quebec. I bounced up, but when I came down, I didn't land right. I could just hear the crunch. I could just see my leg pointing in a different direction. And I just remember grabbing my leg and then just screaming and screaming. There was nothing holding my legs together. In a heartbeat, everything was just gone. Everything I worked hard for had vanished. Everyone told me I was a write-off. So how does a child at age of 17 get back up? It felt like I'd lost something. I lost a part of me. I wanted to give up. And when you're at that point of just giving up, that's when you're meant to really turn your life around and change. It was my mum who believed in me. And for that, I believed in her. I really do question how I made it out. It was little by little, coming in to do the rehab. Step by step, you started to see improvement. The crutches went away, then I could walk. I was able to jog and then run. But then I had loads of injuries along the way. The only thing standing between success and failure is mental toughness. It's about being resilient. Being an athlete isn't like a normal job. The gym, strengthening, the mind work, the fitness for one shot, for 11 seconds. There are a lot of knockbacks, a lot. It's how you handle it. But it's also the most amazing release. I let out all my stresses, all my bad energy. Every time I show up to train, I have the opportunity to learn more about myself and how to run correctly. Some people train brilliantly, but in a race, they don't win. You need focus. You're in an arena of thousands of people, then you're on the start line with 7 other women, then you have a man holding a gun, and you have to learn to channel all this, not panic. But there's so much going on with your family in the crowd, everyone's screaming, wanting you to do well, and obviously they're screaming for the girl alongside you. How do you put that all aside and say, okay, I have to focus on myself, focus on my lane, focus on me. There are sacrifices. There are lots of ways to have fun. Go after your goals and balance it out the right way. In the end, it's about knowing what's important to you and what makes you thrive. That's not just athletics. That's life.
Thank you. Thank you. So what we just saw, that does remind us that resilience isn't about pushing harder. It's about pausing, reminding yourself to pause, reminding yourself to breathe, and rising again with purpose. As Black women, we can carry so much, but rest is how we refuel what the world takes. So rest, again, isn't a retreat, it's restoration. And it's how we keep showing up with clarity, courage, and power. As we move forward, remember this, that resilience can look like stillness, it can look like reflection, and it can also look like joy. So when we rest, we rise together. All right, so let's go. All right. So we are going to get right into it. We are going to now I'll go into our fireside chat, getting ready for 2026, mapping out our influence. I am super excited to bring our guest to the stage. Before I give her introduction, I had the pleasure of first working with Teri on the Kamala campaign last year. And she was also a California Black Women's Legacy Trailblazer. For those of you that do not know, the California Black Women, we celebrate and honor Black women leaders across the state every year. And if Yvonne Wheeler is still on this call, she was also a trailblazer for us last year. So we are very lucky to have 2 trailblazers on today's call. So Teri Holoman brings nearly 2 decades of experience providing strategic counsel to labor unions, associations, elected officials, and political campaigns. She currently serves as Associate Executive Director of Governmental Relations for the California Teachers Association, overseeing their political and legislative operations. As a Los Angeles native, Teri previously worked with SEIU, ULTCW. I'm pretty sure that is an acronym for something. The California Legislative Black Caucus, Policy Institute, and served in the Governor Jerry Brown's administration. Her campaign work includes roles with Supervisor Holly J. Mitchell and the Harris for President campaign. Teri earned her BA in political science from UC Santa Barbara and splits her time between Los Angeles and Sacramento. I am going to bring, here we go. And then I am going to make sure that my notes. All right. Okay. Hi, Teri.
Hi, Karina.
How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to all the women on the phone tonight. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Of course, you're more than welcome. Okay, so we're going to get right started. So you spent nearly 2 decades shaping policy and political strategy in California. From labor to education to government. Given the uncertainty and fatigue many leaders are feeling today, how do you personally stay grounded and hopeful while leading in spaces that often test our resilience?
So asking me to be involved in anything that requires restfulness is hilarious because I don't know that I do any of that. Before I answer the question, let me just stop. I thought Kelly was going to be at a board meeting tonight. I feel so lucky to count Kelly as a friend. She is someone that I look up to and respect, and the commitment that she has to Black women in this space, in politics and public policy, is nothing short of remarkable. And you mentioned Yvonne Wheeler, same in the labor space for decades when she was the only one or one of few. She has been fighting so that Black people have a space, working families have a space and a voice. And so, from Kelly, I learned be consistent because that is also not my strong suit. And from Yvonne, I learned be courageous because both of these women are doing the things that are necessary to make sure that Black women are represented and Black women have a voice. And that is what we need right now, more than ever before in my lifetime. And so to go back to the question about staying grounded, I think I don't. I think I have lost my mind. I think about the work that I used to do prior to joining CTA, and I was a consultant and I had a little bit more freedom. After a big campaign like we just completed with Prop 50, I would take a few weeks off and I would go to the desert or just sit somewhere and be quiet, go hang out with friends. And I didn't worry about what was next. I felt like God, the universe, would order my steps, and I didn't worry. Now I don't do that as much. I am off, for the next couple of weeks, and it is to do things like clean my house, which feels, people are like, oh, are you going somewhere? Are you going? No, I'm going to clean my house. I'm going to be in my house because the clutter and the disorganization and all of that makes me feel crazy. And so I'm learning, how to find restfulness again, how to find peace again, because ever since 2016, past 9-10 years almost, it has felt like chaos. It's ordered chaos. It's chaos by design, to make people feel disoriented, to put people in a place where they don't think they can fight and they don't think they can resist because you're just so tired all the time. So I'm learning. I don't come to the space with an answer other than to say I'm learning, so I'm taking it one day at a time, and I'm doing a lot of reading. And on the one hand, I have a Finsta account. I don't do social media, but I do have a Finsta account, so I can look at gossip and interior design and art, and then occasionally ratchetness. But there are some good accounts that I follow on Instagram, whether it's people talking about, Black women in particular, talking about, soul questions. How do you ask yourself soul questions so that you can survive, whether you work in politics or corporate or government, or you have your own business, or whether you're still struggling to figure it out. And so I do that, and that's where I'm starting. The body will follow, hopefully, because that's a whole other hot mess. So that's my answer to the first question.
That was a beautiful question. I would just have to say thank you for your transparency there. And I think that oftentimes we have to adapt the way we resist or way we rest. It's not always going to be the same as when we were doing it 5 or 10 years ago. So that that kind of put some insight to me for myself. Like, you have to kind of, what worked when you were in college is not going to work for you as an adult. So I hear that loud and clear.
That's so real. And you are much closer to having been in college than I am. So, what works 20 plus years after college, maybe even 30 after college, really doesn't work the same way. That's when you could go out, drink. Now I'm telling too much. That's when you can go out, drink, party, wake up in the same clothes you had on, and then roll into your workplace. You can't do it like that anymore.
And you would be on time.
I've never been on time, really, but yes, close to on time. Mm-hmm.
No, I'm just saying that's usually how it would work back in the day. You would be on time, and now it's like, okay, Lord, please just let me make it.
That's exactly right.
So let's see. You have seen power from every angle. You've seen it through government. You've seen it through campaigns. You've seen it through your advocacy work. When you do think about Black women leading across California, how do we truly start to map our influence?
That's a really good question. And I neglected to say, Karina, for folks on the call, when Kelly said to me last year when we were doing the Harris for President campaign, I have this really talented young sister, if there's anything you can find for her to do on the campaign. And, campaigns, the higher they go, the more bureaucratic they are. So it took us a few weeks to get Karina on, and she was there for the last 2 weeks and made such a tremendous difference. Your energy, your intellect, the way that you just jumped right in and knew how to work with different people, because that is the wonderful thing about campaigns, but also the challenging thing is that you never know what you're going to get. And sometimes it's easy because it's a short period of time. So if you don't like the people, then you don't really have to see them after the campaign is over. But you came in, you had such great energy. And I just want to acknowledge you in this space because you're a young leader, and I'm looking forward to seeing everything you do in the future. So to answer your question about power, I will say power was always really uncomfortable to me. I knew people who had power growing up that I didn't respect, including some family members. And it felt scary, and it felt, I wanted to do the work, but I didn't want to be associated with all of the things that can sometimes come with power. And it took me a long time to feel comfortable with myself, comfortable enough with my voice, comfortable enough with the position that I occupy. And, Holly Mitchell, who I count as a friend and a mentor, a former client, Holly Mitchell used to say, there's personal power and there's positional power. And sometimes, when you have a job like mine or a job like Yvonne's, people look at it as positional power. But like I said, when Yvonne walks into a space, she walks in with not just the labor fed, but with a community at her back. And so for me, I've had to grow into feeling comfortable having my voice in some of these spaces because, for sisters, it always feels like, well, if we say too much or if we do too much, then, we might be asked to leave that space. And so navigating that and being in alignment with yourself is something that I've had to grow into, and so when I look at how we showed up last year, how we always show up, but it was so stark last year, the 92%. And no other constituency within the Democratic Party, and quite frankly, pretty much in politics, no other constituency, Democrat or Republican, is as loyal, is as steadfast as Black women are. And we are also the least protected and the least respected. And so when I look at what's next for us, particularly in this climate, where if anyone thinks it's by accident that within the first 8 months of the Trump administration, more than 300,000 Black women lost their jobs, that's not accidents, that's design, And so when I see, when some of the No Kings protests started earlier this year, there were some critiques, and really probably even before No Kings, really with some of the immigration protests, there were critiques, why don't we see Black folks? Why don't we see Black women out there? And there was a sister on Instagram who talked about how tired she was, how tired she was for us collectively of always being the ones to show up, always being the ones to do the right thing, even if people aren't doing right by us. And so it's my roundabout way of answering the question, which I don't know if I'm really going to get to an answer, because I don't know that there is one yet. I think that it's one, spaces like this, spaces that the Black Women's Collective cultivates, where it's bringing Black women together, whether you're an activist, whether you are an operative, whether you are just someone who cares about being in community, to figure out how we continue to have a voice, how we're not fearful at a time where we know that they are coming for us. And so thinking about next year, looking at what happened, our organization, CTA, played a major role in Prop 50. Kelly, folks like Lanice Jones from Bawapa, all played a major role. Yvonne, obviously, with the Labor Fed, Tia Orr and SEIU, all sisters who were involved in Prop 50. And it was such a huge statement because we were able to organize. We were able to, in a very short period of time, in 60 days, take an initiative that was polling less than 50% and put it over 64%. And Black women, once again, led the way with over 88% of Black women supporting it. And so I think it requires honest conversation. It requires fellowship. It requires creativity. Sometimes I can't do it one way, but I can do it another way. And so how do we figure out those ways? And then it requires us to make sure that we are standing up and saying, this is what we need and deserve, but also doing it in a way that's strategic, where there's a plan. So often, campaigns can be last minute. And yes, I think that whether it's the party or individual campaigns, there's often a taking for granted of Black people, Black women. And so I think we need to think a year ahead, not months ahead, but a year ahead. What do we need to do to put systems in place so that the next campaign, whether it's congressional or legislative, what do we need to do to put systems in place to say, this is how we support Black media, this is how we support Black organizations, this is how we support, that's where I think we need to be. So that's my long answer. Karina, you have to cut me off. You feel free to, do the Sandman and pull me out.
I'm just going to bring up really quick, when I first started with the California Black Women's Collective, we had a economic summit, and I was so tuned into the speaker, and I was supposed to be keeping time. And Kelly and Charles are laughing because they know I totally missed the time mark because I was so engaged, and that is the same thing that's happening here with you. So I don't think I will be able to cut you off because you're so engaging. You're saying some really great nuggets, and I just appreciate this conversation all the way around. One thing I did just want to piggyback on, that you talked about, which I feel like is very much um, under rated, is the sisterhood and the collective of having Black women lift up Black women. And we were having this conversation a little bit earlier about how the relationships are kind of what gets, each of us to these different levels. So I just wanted to point that out. And thank you again for your compliment ahead of your answer of, again, Kelly speaks to that. You spoke to that of how when we do elevate each other, that is where real change happens and where different experiences happen as well. So I do appreciate, thank you. So let's talk about your work at the California Teacher Association a little bit. Let's see. So you did some work there. You did some work major statewide efforts like raising the minimum wage. Impressive. Thank you. I'm saying thank you to everyone on behalf of everyone. You've also helped lead change that touches everyday's lives. What is your sustainable strategy look like when you are at CTA and you're building towards these long-term goals, like preparing for 2026 and beyond?
Sure. So for folks who don't know, California Teachers Association is the union for California's public school teachers. We represent about 310,000 public school teachers. And we are fortunate to have leadership and membership that is very engaged. And they are really the ones who drive the agenda. So, so often elected officials or people seeking elected office come and they want to talk about, whether or not we can weigh in on their endorsement. And it is truly a member-driven process, where member leaders are sitting in a room and they are doing evaluations on candidates and on ballot initiatives and on legislation. And we as staff, whether it's senior staff or junior staff, mid-level staff, we have influence in that process. We weigh in with our opinions, but ultimately it is driven by the members. And so my job is to represent their position, execute their desires. And so as we look towards 2026, I think a couple of things. One, the minimum wage work I did was in LA when LaFonza Butler was leading ULTCW. Now it's called SEIU 2015. ULTCW used to stand for United Long-Term Care Workers Union. But we did it on a local level in Los Angeles. SEIU is really responsible for doing that work on a statewide level. And SEIU California is led by Tia Orr, who is a sister and my sister. And I am fortunate to have her as a partner in a lot of the work that we do, because it is hard work. We have a situation where, for those of you who follow the state budget, that we are careening towards a structural deficit. So outside of what's happened with HR 1 and what the Trump administration is doing, prior to that, the state of California, largely because of Medi-Cal expansion. And so, that's one of those things that's really challenging, because on one level, the state said, we believe in providing health care for as many people as we possibly can, including those people who are undocumented. And so they made moves to expand Medi-Cal. When they did that, though, there wasn't a revenue source attached to it. So in anybody's jobs, whether you do business or public policy, that if you expand services or expand a resource, if you don't have a revenue stream to pay for it, at a certain point, you're going to get to a place where you can't afford to pay for it. And that's basically where the state of California is. And so the structural deficit, depending on who you listen to, is about $10 billion to, in future years could go up to $20 billion. And that's before we get to the cuts that the federal government made. And so for us, for CTA, we have been really focused on next year extending something called Prop 55, which basically is a tax on high income earners that's currently in existence, so not a new tax, but high income earners, to make sure that we can continue to help pay for schools and healthcare. California, despite being the 5th largest economy in the world, is somewhere in the 20s in per pupil spending. So, and we're guaranteed almost 40% of the budget because of Prop 98. And so we are constantly struggling, and even more so under this administration. So organizationally, one of the things that we'll be focused on next year is Prop 55 extension. More broadly speaking, it's the midterms. And we saw that there's dissatisfaction, whether in California with the passage of Prop 50, whether in New Jersey, Virginia, Zoran Mamdani, he may not be some people's politics. He may be a little too progressive or a little too left for some people. What his campaign did is nothing short of a masterpiece. It is a masterpiece and a masterclass in politics and organizing. And for Black women and Black people, as we think about next year, he started at roughly 1%. He was an assembly member that, very few people knew outside of his community. And one of the things that was so touching about his election night speech is, as he was talking about who he ran for, he talked about Senegalese women. When's the last time you heard someone talk about a West African woman in that way? It was with reverence and respect. And it was those women, along with some East Indian women, Pakistani women, who actually helped organize. And there was an article last week about that attributed part of his campaign success to them, because they're the ones who were, as he said, the aunties who dug in and represented for him. And so that, I think, is probably one of the best lessons we've seen. What we did in California on Prop 50 was amazing. And that was 235 organizations, grassroots, labor, democratic, that came together to say, okay, we can do this. There was, again, like Kelly, consistent and sustained phone banking, precinct walking, outreach. That's the first part. It's the coalition, But I think the other thing is, like, looking at Mamdani, everyone who does organizing work, political or otherwise, should take a look at that and use that as a case study for how you can move someone from 1% to 51% in the nation's largest city. It's amazing. Regardless of, where you are with his policies, that's some amazing shit. Amazing. My mouth. That's amazing.
I didn't even hear anything.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No, thank you for that. I was just sitting here. So I know that Supervisor Holly Mitchell is a name that has come up quite often, and you have mentioned Holly Mitchell as well earlier on, and also Mark Ridley Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell us, in addition to the experiences or the examples that you've just shared, what experiences that has working with them taught you about leading with both power and purpose? And then how can we build those leadership pipelines that reflect our values as Black women?
It's a really good question. So, I first started working with MRT, I don't even want to say out loud, 2002. I was just a baby. And I was working for the Democratic Party at the time for a coordinated campaign. And that was before McCain-Feingold. There were a lot of different rules on campaign fundraising, things like that. And so the party was able at that time to directly fund community organizations and PACs and things like that. And so we supported what was the very nascent African-American voter rep project. And there was a campaign consultant named Dermot Givens. He said, I really want you to get to know MRT. And, MRT has this amazing presence. And, there was the side of me that was I was young and shy. And, I thought, am I going to be able to work with this man who had, as a child, as a young person, a 28-year-old, Marina, please don't tell me if you're 28, just don't tell me. But as a 28-year-old, he was leading SCLC, and, so I was very intimidated. And we started talking. I did a project with him, 2000, my mom had just passed, so 2002. And he said, I like the right, and I think you're smart, and I'm going to retain you to do, some work on the African American Voter Rep Project. And what's so unusual about that, particularly during that time, is that in politics, there are a handful of consultants. It's expanded, it's gotten a little bit better, but in politics, there are a handful of consultants who run the majority of campaigns. So 5, maybe, give or take, that are really big, and then other ones a little smaller. And most of them are white. Well, all of those 5 are white. And MRT made space for Black consultants. He created a space for Black consultants. And so he, understandably and rightfully said, I'm going to have the people that are the best run my campaigns, but I'm also going to have the people that can be the best be a part of my campaigns. And so I learned skills from him. There was a point at which he was transitioning fundraisers, and we'd been working together for a couple of years, and he said, hey, my fundraiser is leaving. I'm going to need you to help fundraise because it was near this big event. And I was like, oh, I don't like asking people for money, and I don't want to do that. And and he's like, just make some calls. And I learned how to fundraise, and I became a fundraiser for a short period of time. And someone said, can we please define MRT? MRT is Mark Ridley Thomas, former city council member, assembly member, senator, supervisor, and goes by the moniker MRT. And so because of him, I learned how to fundraise, and that's a rare skill to have, especially in this business. And what I learned from him, in addition to kind of personally what I learned, is that he was unapologetically Black in every space, all the time. He never, trying to think of the way I'd want to say it, he never hid his agenda, in advancing development for Black people, healthcare for Black people, opportunities for Black people. He walked into the space, and that's what you knew he wanted to do, was make sure that Black folks had a seat at the table. At the same time, he also understood and recognized the power of coalitions. So days of dialogue, just the work that he did in the progressive space, bringing people together, labor, community, Black, Korean, Jewish, Latino. He was that person. And so I learned from him the power of coalitions, Empowerment Congress, that's exactly right. And he understood branding, and he understood, so there's so many things that I could say I learned from him. From Holly, what I think is so amazing about Holly is that, she came to politics really as a policy wonk and a policy maker. She is brilliant, and she is invested in making sure that Black women and Black families are not just considered and accounted for, but represented. And she did that, whether she's at Crystal Stairs, prior to that, she had worked for Diane Watson, and in between there, Western Center on Law and Poverty. So she is very clear and very certain about who she is. One of the things about, we talked about power a little bit earlier. And one of the hardest things in this space is to stay grounded, not just in your own physical and mental health and mental space, but to stay grounded in who you are and what your personal values and convictions are. And one of the things I respect and admire most about Holly is that she knows exactly who she is. She knows why she's doing this work. She is doing this work not for the next office, not for power, not for position. She's doing this work because she genuinely, truly cares about people and about children and making sure public policy works for them. And so it's so fascinating to see her evolve in this space where she came in as a policy wonk and a policy maker. And I think now she has one of the best political minds in California politics. And so I've learned that you can start out one way and evolve into something else, no matter how old you are, no matter your orientation. And so, those are the things I've learned.
Thank you. Well, I'm just going to ask one more question because I want to give the floor an opportunity to ask you questions. So as we close, as we wrap up, I am just asking Teri, if you could leave our sisters here with one truth about power and purpose in this season, what would it be?
So one, I saw someone in the chat mention Dr. Flo Coffer in Sacramento. For folks who don't know, Dr. Flo ran for mayor in Sacramento last year and came very close. And she and I were actually at an event, and so I met her in person. Incredibly impressive. While I live in Sacramento, I still think I live in LA. My telephone number, my voter registration, all of that is at my place in LA. And so I'm not of Sacramento, but that's right, not too bad, less than 2,000 votes shy. She is amazing. And I love her audacity, you know. That I think is what I leave folks with respect to power. That again, sometimes because this space is not welcoming to us, and not only is it not welcoming, it doesn't want us to be here. So even when we get there, the rules change. The game changes because it's not a space that's designed for us. They know that if we actually get a foothold in this space, then we can change it in a really meaningful way. And so I think the one thing that I think is that I've learned how to be more audacious, and it takes different forms. I think that's the other thing I'd say is that Tia, who I mentioned, executive director of SEIU, we are really close friends, but outwardly very different personalities. She is badass. I will fuck you up. Sorry. She is like, I will take the fight to you. And I am more measured. I'll still cut you. You just might not know it's coming. And so both are equally effective. And she has a bigger portfolio of work. But we learn based on our own personalities and our own styles, how to be. This moment right now, though, requires audacity. It's being courageous and it's being consistent. So both Kelly and Yvonne, but it requires audacity. And we have to be able to be fearless in this moment because we know what the alternative is. We know what's going to happen if this administration in DC is successful in what they plan for us. We know what that looks like for our families, for our communities, for ourselves. And so that's probably the one thing I'd say is, be audacious and hold each other accountable. It is the really important part about having sisters. Kelly hasn't done it, but would do it. She would call me and say, get your shit together, your slip is showing. She would do that. I mean, she probably could have done it. She just hasn't done it, but she would do that. And that's not beef. That's love. We can't in this moment hold each other accountable. My life, my orientation, my work style, sometimes I'm gone for 3 months and you won't hear a peep out of me. If you tell me you need me, then I'll be there, but you won't hear a peep out of me for 3 months because sometimes I'm just trying to maintain with everything that's happening right now, And so, yeah, that's, I think, what I got.
I love that. Audacity. I'm taking that into 2026. Yes, Kelly Todd Griffin.
Hello, I have a question.
Yes.
How do you self-motivate in the midst of everything that you have going on? How do you self-motivate?
That is really hard. Look, I will, because I feel this is a fireside chat and I feel like it's a safe space. I've gone through it. Like the past few years, I think some of it is, there was an article in Forbes a year or two ago, and it talked about how when you feel uneasy and you're questioning what's going on, it's oftentimes because you're in misalignment, either the organization you're working for, company you're working for, their values are misaligned with yours. If it's a relationship, sometimes it's not they're a bad person, it's just you're misaligned. And I think I've felt misaligned, for the past couple of years. And then you layer that on my dad, who I'm very close to, has had a couple bouts of cancer. He's amazing because he it happens. He does the surgery, the treatment, and then he still picks back up and keeps going. And I think from him, I've learned you can't sit still. I mean, like there's restful resistance, sit still, but then there's feeling sorry for yourself. But Kel, I've gone through it, and I probably haven't shared it in a way where I felt, because, in this space, it doesn't feel comfortable or safe to say, I'm going through it right now. I can't deal with this right now. I can't, especially in politics where it can be really cutthroat, and you don't want people to know if you're feeling, uncertain, unsure, whatever. And so I'm having to learn how to talk to myself differently, which I had not fully appreciated, because sometimes we're the hardest on ourselves more so than other people. And I'm having to learn how to remind myself it's okay. It's okay to rest. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay to ask for help, because that's not comfortable for us because we're always trying to prove something. And so I don't know if I do it, but I'm getting there. I'm learning.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Does anyone else have, we're doing Q&A. Does anyone else have, no, it's okay. It's okay. Does anyone else have any questions for Miss Teri Holoman? Open floor. You can take yourself off mute if you do. Okay. Well, yes. Did I hear someone? Carolyn Fowler. Yes, ma'am. You're on mute if you're speaking.
Someone asked how I found a mentor. And
oh, okay. Thank you.
And I saw the question.
Yes, thank you.
And you know what? It's funny because I was lucky in my life to have a lot of mentors. My mom was the best mentor. I was hard-headed, so I didn't always listen, I was really fortunate. She was a teacher, then a principal, then she ran Title I programs for LAUSD, and passed very young at 58. But I think a lot of the ways, you sometimes don't think that you're like your parents until you see certain things. And one of the things that she taught me was to have a crew, have girlfriends that you can be open and honest and transparent with. And I think that's the biggest thing. But I was lucky to have throughout my career, Black women. Kathy Jones-Irish was an amazing mentor when I was really young and just starting out. She was actually the one who I was doing an internship with Warner Brothers. And they had, after the civil unrest, had started a program where they were going to give, opportunities for Black and brown folks to, work in the entertainment space. And it was a public affairs department. And she said, if you really want to understand public affairs, you need to work as an official. And she introduced me to Kevin Murray, referred me to Kevin Murray. And that was my first job in politics, which led to his campaign, which led to a career. And so she was probably the first mentor. And then I think along the way, it's been people like Yvonne that have been hands-on, people like Carolyn, who's trying to ask a question, who just their presence, like just by their presence, I always knew that she was someone who cared about me as a Black woman, but also cared about Black people enough to tell me, like, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do. And so, yeah, so it's like, it's been random. And I've not been the best at mentoring because I've been in my own head for so long. And so, like I said, Kelly makes me better, and her consistency is making me say, okay, I need to engage more. And so, yeah.
Okay, I think I figured out how to unmute on this.
Hi, Carolyn.
Greetings. Not so much a question. Listen, thank you. I'm not surprised though, for sharing. You're mentoring. You've done a great job of mentoring tonight. I don't know if people realize it, but you got some invaluable information. I hope this is recorded because it absolutely should be and be shared with anyone who's even thinking about running for office or working in an office or just feeling comfortable and getting up the nerve to ask, what should I do? Um, we're we're always in tough times. They're always moving the cheese. So Teri is one that we don't have to talk every day or even every month, but we know we can call each other if necessary. And sometimes we're in a fight and people don't know we're in the same side. We're
That's
fighting.
right.
I'm like Terry. I prefer to be behind the scenes rather than in front of the scenes because I think strategically you can do more damage. To be quite honest, but
Yep.
I just and Terry and I know that. But I just hope that people really took to heart, and thank you for feeling. You should feel comfortable in this space. Kelly always does a great job of that and leading. Thank you, Kelly, for continuing to bring these conversations to everyone. It's critically important, particularly now. I don't know how much people really realize this next year is going to be hell. But we got to get a governor. We got to get behind the governor. We got to, and we have to be in those spaces. We don't all have to be on the same side, but some of us have to get with the winner. And so don't hate, appreciate, but let's win together. So often, and that's the only other thing I would say, and Teri was right about this. So often people are in a space that they are misaligned with the people that they're, whether it's city council, school board, water board, but we have to have their backs. And I don't care how busy I am. When I hear a sister's in trouble, I'm coming. And people need to not be afraid. Now that's when my other side comes out, Carolyn Jean. So we have to stand up for our people. And I appreciate Kelly is great at letting us know who needs our help. And that's critically important as well. So when you get these emails saying, can you come and speak at this council member, this water board, the state assembly, whatever, try to make it possible to be there. It really makes a difference. You may not think so, but it does. So thank you, Teri. Love you to death. You know that.
You too. You too. And Carolyn said something that is so important because I didn't even talk about the governor's race. But you know, so often, and we are hard on each other, you know, so and so supporting this one and so supporting that one. And I think the thing that I think about for next year in particular is there's a difference between being emotional and passionate. And we need to be passionate.
Yep.
Some of this we can't be emotional about. We have to be strategic about. So if Carolyn is with candidate A and I'm with candidate B, I shouldn't be out there trash talking, except for a few people where I probably would trash talk. But
well, we're probably on the same page with those
right,
people.
Right. But if Carolyn is doing that, there's some of this is like sports, right? Anybody who played organized sports, I played softball, whatever. There's a lot of this that takes place on the field, but once the game is over, you got to figure out how you're going to work with someone.
Yep.
And if I've trashed a candidate and I've talked bad about Carolyn and she's sitting up there and she's an advisor to the candidate, that doesn't help me or my organization, again, with the exception of a few people. But that doesn't help. And so we have to be really strategic about the decisions we're making and figuring out if Carolyn's over there, good, let the best woman win in terms of the candidate.
Right.
And how do we pick back up and work together? Because we have so many issues. And, you know, candidates, if they don't have people who are there to remind them and to say, you have to support this Black issue, this Black person, this Black candidate, they will very easily and conveniently forget and say, well, it's because that person wasn't there with me. So we always need people that are inside once a campaign is over.
Oh shoot! It's not showing up at the phone. 7:30.
Kelly, did you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to ask you, you know, because I've seen your journey for years since I started working for Karen in 06 or 05. I think you were already knee deep with MRT. Did you see your journey going this way? And when did you know it was time for you to pivot? You said a little bit about, when it was just unsettling, but
Mhm.
you've gone from, like you said, you started in the entertainment and then you met a politician and then you just kept going. Did you see this in your journey, and how did you pivot and make sure you could take your skills to be transferable?
So I made bad life choices. I should have been very focused on making money. And then I could have gone back, like, what did Jay-Z say? I can't help the poor if I'm one of them. I should have focused on making money than, coming back. But that being said, I also think that I am kind of not of my generation, like my orientation. I've always envied people who knew, like, I want to be a teacher or a lawyer or a doctor or whatever. I didn't ever have that. I was always interested in a lot of different things. And possibly, if I had been a little bit more courageous, I probably would have pursued something more creative. Like, I love writing. I probably would have been a journalist, but that seemed really unstable, really unsafe. And I was always interested in politics and history. But because I had, I never stayed in one place longer than 3 years. I consulted with MRT for a period of about 10 years, but I never stayed in one place because I was either, one, always interested in something else, two, I got bored, three, it was a misalignment, it wasn't a right fit. So I gave myself the opportunity, and sometimes other people's encouraging, like, gave myself the opportunity to try different things. And I think that's really what I respect about people who presumably are in Karina's generation, that they're not wedded to just one thing. Our parents had to get a government job, a city, a state, a county job, because that provided security and benefits and retirement, and oftentimes had upward mobility because of it. For me, I don't know. There was a sister. Again, you really should not have asked me another question, Kelly, because I'm going a long thing. There was a sister that I was listening to, and I was on the Moth Radio Hour, and she was talking about, she was in, like, museum, like, arts, like a vice president of a museum or something. But she talked about when she first interviewed in front of white men for a position, and they asked her those coded kind of questions, whatever. And so she talked about, they found out that she did, they found she did spoken word. So they were asking, were you like one of those, Afrocentric spoken word, or you more poetry? And then they found one of her one of her poems, whatever. So at the end of what she said, she talked about the difference between living life by instinct or intention. And I think I always lived by life by instinct. This felt right, or this felt good, or I felt like I wanted to have a new experience, as opposed to living with intention to map out my career. I've been really lucky, and I've worked hard, and so I landed where I landed. I don't think it's the end of the journey. Who knows when the end of the journey will be. But I think being open and being honest with yourself about what's working and what's not working. But I loved when she said she learned to live her life by intent and not instinct, because that's a very different thing. You could be successful living by instinct, but intent is a thing,
Yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
I do too. I have audacity and I have intent, not instinct. Thank you so much, Teri. You have been a marvelous guest. Thank you, everyone, you're welcome. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. And we are going to not say goodbye to Teri, but I'm going to put you back in the audience. And
perfect.
Then we are going to, I'm going to bring back up my. Thank you again. I appreciate you, Teri.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Have a good evening. And Kelly knows how to get in touch with me. She also knows I can sometimes be a little flaky. So if there's something I can do to be helpful, Kelly will tell me what to do, and I'll do it, whatever she needs me to do.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Crystal, I'm a Libra. So I'm everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. It's a whole situation over here.
We love it. Okay, so we are moving on to our joy practice. So everyone that has joined this call in the past knows that we like to end on a joyful note. We like to have a moment. Oops, you can't see my screen. Didn't realize that. Bring this back up. Okay, perfect. So we like to end on a joyful note. And today we're going to switch it up a little bit. I won't lead this part, but we do have a member that is a part of our collective who is going to help with the joy practice today. And I am just going to introduce her. Her name is Davida Chanel Baker. Davida blends decades of talent management experience with a foundation in psychology and mindfulness to help individuals, teams, and organizations unlock their potential and shine. She's a former insider to Hollywood's top talent agencies and A-list teams. She now leads Etc. and Company, guiding clients to discover their own star power. A Southern University and Thurgood Marshall School of Law graduate, Davida Chanel is also a producer, author, and motivational speaker. Known for her vibrant storytelling and practical inspiration, she empowers her audience to believe in the impossible, take bold steps forward, and to get their shine on. Without further ado, we are going to bring Davida to here we go. I'm navigating. There we go. Okay, there you go, Davida.
Good evening. I am so full of joy right now. Teri, thank you for everything you said. I definitely am going to show up more audacious in the world this week. And thank you. Just to get straight into it, it is so understandable that we may have all let the toxicity of the current environment steal our joy. People who didn't value our joy or positivity have tried us, and they continue to try to take our joy away from us. They wanted us to lose ourselves, and it is true that we may have lost bits of ourselves here and there. But now is our time to get ourselves back. Now is the time for us to get our joy. So to lead tonight, I have 5 quick affirmations. You can take these with you, and I really encourage you to share something you learned from tonight with a friend. The first affirmation is, I acknowledge reality without abandoning my stance on joy. Another affirmation, I recognize that joy is all around me. I believe in myself, I believe in us, and I believe in our power. Difficult days are temporary, but joy comes, in the morning. And lastly, when faced with the unknown, I choose to pursue my joy. And I hope you all will pursue your joy as well. And again, please tell a friend, because the third Monday of the month is always popping with the California Black Women's Collective. And I'm just so grateful to be here. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Davida. Thank you so much. I'm coming. Thank you, Davida. We appreciate that. Let me see. I recognize joy is all around me.
I'll type them and throw them in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Because I was trying to write as fast as you were dishing them out. And then one of my favorite, because it difficult days are temporary because joy comes in the morning. Love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for blessing us with that. And we will look out for those. And I'll be sure to share them in the follow-up email as well to everyone. Let's see. Oops. Okay, so let's move it right along. We are going to go here. Okay, so now we have made it to announcements. I just want to thank everyone for making it this far. We have our Restful Resistance community WhatsApp chat. This is our WhatsApp chat where you can join us for updates, affirmations, and community events and more. This is not a space where I am the only facilitator, the only one dropping gems. We open this space for you to join as well and include any events, updates that you may have. I'm going to go ahead and put that link in the chat for you just in case you are not already a part of our Restful Resistance family. Go ahead and drop that one there. Okay, and then let's see. We also want to make sure that you all become a member with us. We have a membership that is growing, and we are looking forward to the high touch experience that we would love to provide our audience, which we are providing our audience. So please be sure to become a member. You can scan this QR code, or you can go to this link here. I'm going to put this link in the chat as well and learn more about becoming a member with us. It's our sister circle. It's our space for you to learn about events as well, to learn about upcoming reports. And speaking of reports, for those of you who may have missed it, we did just release our State of Black Women's in California report. And I'll be sure to put that link as well in the follow-up email, just so you can be sure to read and share that with your sister circles. And then we have a program highlights. I'm going to bring Keisha Sexton. She is another program manager with the collective, and she is just going to go over one of the programs that we have currently going on at the California Black Women's Collective.
Yes, thank you so much, Karina. Hi, everyone. So nice to meet you, and so, also great to see some familiar faces. As Karina shared, I'm Keisha Sexton, the program manager for She Works California. We're starting our workforce development program this January. We received partial funding from LA County Federation. And this would be a 5-month workforce development program for Black women who are unemployed, underemployed, or system impacted. And we really want them to receive the soft skills and the support that we all have here to really support them in their journey to find a good quality job. And so if you are interested, or if you know someone who's interested and can benefit from a workforce development program, we strongly encourage you to apply. I just dropped the interest form in the chat, and I'll also leave my email address, and then you can also reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Keisha. Let's see. All right. Well, that is the end of our announcements. I just want to thank everyone for joining tonight's call. Thank you, Teri Holoman. Thank you for being a blessing, as Carolyn had mentioned, to this conversation. And I do want to mention, when we had said a shout out, excuse me, for oh great, now I forgot it. Sacramento, Dr. Flo. She was our guest on the last episode, so please be sure to visit our YouTube channel to check out that recap for her on our show as well. And again, I just thank you all for joining today. Have a wonderful evening. Stay dry and be safe.